Thank you for that introduction. And thank you all for joining us here today at the FCC Farm Women's Summit. I'm very pleased to be here today to talk to you about cash flow planning and managing working capital through the storm, whatever storm you may be working through in your farm family business. Managing the family business as well as the family and business relationships can often feel like navigating stormy waters through the rocks. The usual harvest time stressors like lack of weather, lack of sleep, breakdowns, international trade issues, employee issues, etc., pile on to the existing and often underlying business or family issues. Lack of financial knowledge can erode confidence and have a negative impact on management decisions and relationships, causing increased stress levels and challenges to your mental health and your overall wellness. So the first thing we're going to look at today is working capital and cash flow. An FCC poll revealed working capital to be among the top concern for grain producers right now. And I know that it is a major concern for livestock producers as well. So analyzing that working capital and cash flow situation should be done in conjunction with updating the net worth statement, the credit portfolio review, and prior to any large cash withdrawals, down payments, loan payments, etc. A quick way to take a pulse check and get an indication about the working capital and cash flow situation is by calculating your sources and uses of cash, and we will get into that shortly. Another way is by analyzing your short-term credit requirements and measuring that against your options to service those requirements will help you identify areas of strength as well as areas that may need to be amended to ensure you will have adequate timing of cash flow over the next 12 to 18 months. So the first thing we want to talk about is the sources of cash, and that calculation of all those numbers that go into all of your sources of cash. And the first one is your working capital. So that's very simply your current assets less your current liabilities. So get that together and have that number in this calculation, as well as your operating loans. So you'll want to be including the authorized amount in that number. Your crop input lines, the authorized amount or planned crop input expenses, whichever is less. So if you've got very large limits on your crop input accounts that you never use, only use the amount that you reasonably will use on those accounts. Cash advances available. So you use the number that you typically would be authorized to use on this account. If you're using the total amount available, then use that number. Off-farm income should be included in this as well. Be mindful of the type of credit available and if this will sufficiently meet your needs without sacrificing profit. So when you're doing this calculation, have a look at all of these areas and just see, do you have credit limits that are significantly higher in some areas that are less usable, that could be improved or increased in other areas that would be more usable for you. Consider your actual working capital and the timing of marketability as well. So now we're going to look at your uses of cash. So these are all the places that you're going to use all of the cash that you've sourced out in that previous slide. So your variable expenses, your land rent expense, your living expenses, other drawings or transition payouts. I work with farm families who often have very large transition payouts of preferred shares as the the transitioning in generation is paying the generation that is transitioning out. Those can often be 100,000 or more per year, so make sure you include those in there because that's definitely a use of your cash. Debt service requirement, if the current portion of long-term debt is included already in the liabilities, do not double count by including them here. So it depends on where you're getting your information from. And your operations cash flow position is the net total of the sources of cash on the previous slide less the uses of cash on this side. So if there is a delay in your ability to deliver or you choose to store your inventory longer in search of a stronger market, do you have sufficient cash resources or available credit to manage this successfully? Now, this calculation of working capital is not going to give you that answer. It's going to give you the net total for the year, but it's not going to help you with the timing of that. And that is what we're going to talk about in the monthly cash flow analysis. So knowing your cash flow situation at least 12 to 18 months in advance provides you with the clarity and the information you need to assess your cash situation and deal with timing issues well in advance of them occurring. So your monthly cash flow is a worksheet that outlines all the cash inflows and outflows per month. It is created and updated annually at minimum. It's used for managing day-to-day cash flow requirements, referred to for grain market planning, and timing of grain sales to your cash flow needs. It's also used to identify and plan to strategically deal with a surplus cash flow. Now, as this is a pretty good problem to have, it is also something that does need to be dealt with to improve profitability. You have that good 12 to 18 month look into the future and see that there's going to be times throughout the year that you have a very large cash surplus that the operation does not need to use. Perhaps the best use of that cash is to be in a short-term investment just to gain a bit more profit, and best way to have that cash working for you. Identify and plan to strategically deal with potential future shortfalls, and this is often the biggest benefit of having a look at that 12 to 18 month out sort of crystal ball, is to see where you may potentially have some shortfalls and how you will be able to deal with them. So if you've got a shortfall of a couple $100,000 certain months, or maybe that shortfall is significantly larger into the millions, do you have enough credit to cover those shortfalls when they do happen? If it's a timing delay, or it could be just a matter of timing of your loan payments to your cash flow coming in. So it allows you that crystal ball look into the future to time that cash flow and deal with shortfalls well in advance of them occurring. Align new and existing loan payments. So I alluded to this in my previous comment. I often do see payments concentrated in those months of May and November, June and December, and perhaps those aren't the best months depending on when you typically are marketing your grain or livestock. So have a good look at that. See if there is a way that you can create better cash flow by spreading those payments out throughout the season that you're typically selling your products. Reducing the reliance on your operating loan is another great way that you can improve profitability just by having a look at that cash flow analysis. Often you can find ways to improve your cash flow by matching your cash inflows to your outflows and reduce that reliance on your operating loan and reducing your interest costs. And also to gain a better understanding of when you should be marketing your grain typically grain marketing would be the benefit here of this timing. Cattle is often marketed in concentrated months, but there's often a lot of flexibility in when you can market your grain. So this is very useful if you're working with a grain market advisor as well. They will be using your monthly cash flow analysis to help you create your grain market plan that is in your best interest and will capture the greatest profitability for you. So start with a whole farm historical and forecast analysis of cash inflows and outflows, and then drill down into that month-by-month analysis. The previous year's cash flow from your accounting program will be helpful in creating your cash flow projection and taking a proactive approach to ensuring you have sufficient working capital and cash flow will reduce the risk of cash flow shortfalls and help to strengthen the relationships with creditors and suppliers. So once you have identified that perhaps there is something that you need to deal with, either in your working capital and your cash flow, what do you do now? Now what? Here's where you can start to build out a strategic plan. Start with a whole farm historical and forecast analysis of cash inflows and outflows, and then drill down into the month-by-month analysis. The previous year's cash flow from your accounting program will be helpful in creating a cash flow projection. Taking a proactive approach to ensuring you have sufficient working capital and cash flow will reduce the risk of cash flow shortfalls and help to strengthen the relationships with your creditors and your suppliers. So identifying an area of concern is the first step in working towards a solution. We've talked about how to improve your profitability, working capital, and cash flow. Now the next things to consider in your strategic plan is goals and visions. So having a roundtable discussion with all the members of your farm family business on what their personal, family, and farm business goals, as well as the vision that everyone has for the business, will help keep you all aligned and pulling in the same direction. A risk assessment. So having a good look at what all risks are facing the business, but also the individuals working in the business, will help you create a plan around how to mitigate those risks and deal with them. A SWOT analysis that talks about the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats that face the business are also very useful in helping you understand what risks you need to be dealing with, but also with the strengths that you bring to the table and bring to your business and the opportunities that are out there to help you build out that plan to get in front of those opportunities before they happen and allow you to take advantage of them when they do. Through these discussions, you'll come up with some critical factors to the success of your business. And when you can do that, you can then identify what are the priorities that you need to deal with right now and what are the things that can be put off till later. Not that they're not important, but just what are the priorities that you need to deal with today. One of those areas to be talking about in your strategic plan is also the capital budget plan. That's a 5-year look into the future as to what you're going to need to be purchasing so that you make sure that you're got the financial situation in place and the structure, the credit structure in place to allow you to realize on that capital budget plan. Other financial indicators required to gauge the financial health of the business and identify areas of strengths and concerns can be proactively addressed. And we won't get into all of those today, but there certainly are other financial indicators to be considering when you are building out your strategic plan. And the most important part is to act. So creating an action plan and ensuring the implementation of that action plan is really where the rubber meets the road. We can talk till the cows come home, but if there's no action around it, around the planning that you've worked on and identified places that you need to create an action plan around, then it's not a good use of your time. So please make sure that you have an action plan and a plan to implement it and make sure that these things happen. And if you need help implementing that plan, that you get those folks, those professionals that can work with you to help you do that. Navigating with confidence and peace of mind is really the most important piece of this. Having a solid understanding of their working capital and cash flow situation enables farmers to make decisions and manage their business with confidence and peace of mind, while significantly improving the relationships inside their family, but also with creditors, and reducing stress for themselves and their families. And if you need some help, here's the areas that I focus in my practice: farm financial planning, strategic planning, transition planning, intensive debt management, farm family business coaching, meeting facilitation, and quarterbacking the process, because you will be working with many advisors throughout your farming career. And specifically, if you're working on a strategic plan or a farm transition plan, you're going to be working with many advisors, and keeping all those advisors working together with you in a time frame that you want to have this process acted on is very important in keeping things moving forward. Thank you very much for your time today. I hope that you've got some key tips and takeaways that you can create an action plan around as to what you will implement after the FCC Farm Women Summit today to help you move your business forward. Thank you.